So as usual, we'll begin a prayer for teacher-student. By now you know it, so you can repeat it nicely along with me. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. As usual, I'll mute my microphone while you formulate and vocalize any questions. Okay, so blessed are you. You're all enlightened. There are some questions that have come up, I suppose, in my various recent activities. I'm thinking more of when I was in Switzerland. And the remarkable thing about yoga teachers and people attending these conferences was that only one of the teachers, indeed, only one of the participants, was Indian from India, and yet all of the teachers and the varieties of yoga schools all came from particular traditions in India itself. Because most of the people had gone to India and had learnt and got diplomas and hands-on techniques from reputable yoga teachers in India. And I suppose when I meet with these groups, I ask them a question: what has yoga got to do with health and wellness? And it's always a kind of surprise question, because they think, well, it's everything, because that's a perception that yoga is all to do with physical fitness. And my answer is very little, if anything, has it got to do directly with health and wellness. And that always creates a puzzled look amongst listeners. So maybe that's a question that can be addressed. When we are born and as we develop, increasingly we develop a sense of self-identity. We deal with this when we deal with personality development, when we deal with the Enneagram, the essence of truth. And so we understand that much of our personality is developed in response to the demands of our parents, whoever plays the parental role, because we don't know any better. And it comes with a certain inbuilt propensity, no doubt. And if you believe in the state of rebirth or the state of transmigration, then it looks like we come with a certain quantity and quality of experience. And as we go on and develop, we gain more experience. And most of our experiences as a response to the world around us. But it is our key difficulty, of course, our key obstacle, that we have an individual sense of identity, a kind of small bubble, a small world that consists of myself, my immediate environment, and whatever is relevant to that environment, so that my survival strategy can be threefold. It can be based on handling things by myself, or it can be based on cooperation with other people, but still with my survival in mind, or it could be the intimate consultation and association with a select few. But in any event, it is always to do with myself. What is my best strategy where I can survive? We find this in every biological species, by the way. We find this that there can be a hibernation kind of mechanism, a loner, or a gregarious attitude. We find this in the atomic structures too, that we find the little fermions and bosons and different characteristics. And some subatomic particles are just directly antisocial. They don't want to share any of their space. And others have to be together in groups. So these characteristics we find pretty much at every level. And this comes down to attraction and repulsion. Again, we find this in every aspect of life, whether it is atomic life or biological life. But it's a trap, you see, because it narrows our experience and our thinking, and all of it is contained in this small bubble. And as soon as we break out of that, we're on a move toward our own freedom. But it's a very, very strong tie that we have, this self-identity. And that's no surprise, because you've learned this through your studies of Vedanta and yoga. And so significant part of that, is the physical. So we could do a lot of physical training. We could take care of the physical body for various reasons. One, to correct something. Another one, to increase our longevity. Another is a response to a social demand that emphasizes more and more physical health. It might be a response also to our overindulgence in a world where we have access to luxuries. It's noticeable that commercial food now has offered us increasing quantities. And then the quality of what we're eating has an increased amount of sugar. And naturally, this appears in the waistline. And so it's all centered so far just around the physical, but we know that we feel much better psychologically when we feel physically fit. And also, when we are alert and refreshed and intrigued and interested and concentrated mentally, it has a good effect on the body. When we engender a quality of joy, then every single cell of the body becomes joyful. This much we know. So we can't separate the psychophysical. We can't. It's one unit. But again, it's within a bubble. So there are various attitudes toward Hatha Yoga. One is just to do it for pure exercise, for physical health, in which case that makes us egocentric and body-centric, concerned about what the other person thinks of me physically. Or we can do it for a sense of integration. We can do it for a sense of certain calmness that comes with it. If we do it properly, it involves some breathing techniques. It involves the technique of stretching. And after a yoga exercise class, physical yoga, we should feel pretty good. We should feel energized. If it's a good class, we'll feel energized because we've managed to bend and twist the central cable of the nervous system that then energizes all the other nerves in the nervous system. And so we should have a feeling of a flow, a good flow, healthy flow of energy, as opposed to other kinds of exercise where you feel exhausted. Running on treadmill, for example. And not only that, but running on a treadmill in a gym, watching war and blood and destruction on Sky News. So, how can we get over this? Because the latter example, will that give us any benefit physically? Although we're moving the body in an energetic way, what effect does it have on our mental state? So the two things have to be well addressed. And so the issue really is that we need inner purification. We need to elevate the mind to a certain condition that is pure. Pure means that has no sense of self-interest. that doesn't relate itself to the body-mind. And we need, in other words, a real transformation of our psychophysical organism. And we need to understand that no development or unfoldment or growth or evolution itself is possible unless we take pains to practice purity in thought, in word, and in deed, in all these three dimensions. And when we talk about thought, word, and deed, we are really talking about external expressive signatures of the divine, because thought comes from consciousness, pure consciousness. If it wasn't for the fact that it is pure consciousness, the process of thought and thinking would not take place. Speech is our expression. We can express our emotional mind through speech. And very often speech can be more damaging to others and to ourselves than any kind of toxic food. And then in our actions. Now, emotions, that is a signature of something deeper within us. And we can call this bliss, a blissful expression. When we are loving, when everything is loving, everything becomes happy, everything becomes joyful, and everything becomes ultimately bliss. Bliss is the highest expression we have for just that notch above joy. It's a description that describes some level of fullness, some kind of abundance of joy that fills us from head to toe and beyond. So our language is quite carefully distinctive between mere pleasure, joy, happiness, and bliss. And then deeds. We have the impulse to do things with our hands and with all our energy to express a kind of life. It is to do with life. Even jobs are to do with sustaining physical life. And so our activity and our action, our will, in other words, is evidence of a kind of willing mind that in itself is a signature of our own pure existence and our wish to perpetuate that existence in the world. So this we call, of course, in philosophy, existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss. And so all of these expressions are there, but they have to be purified. They have to still operate, and yet with no sense of identification with a psychophysical that is just our bubble. So we have to admit that this purification process is necessary. But, how to attain absolute purity is still a question. And Swami Brahmananda, the first president of the Ramakrishna order, he once had this to say. He says, from my own experience, I can tell you this. I can tell you that none can ever be absolutely pure unless one does japa sadhana. That's a remarkable and direct technical process given to us. So then the next question is, what is this japa sadhana? What is sadhana? Sadhana is spiritual practice. And practice means I have to repeat things. Japa means engaging a certain mantra and repeating it. And so he goes on to say, by way of explanation, that and that one of his disciples was told by a very respected Swami of the Ramakrishna order, his name was Swami Vishuddhanandaji, who later also became president, that for attaining purity of mind, one should do a fixed number of japas every day. It's not just loosely japa, a fixed number of japas every day. And the number he recommended was the very small figure of 10,000. 10,000 mantras, not 10,000 rounds. Now that's equivalent of, if you calculate, is about 4 to 5 hours a day of japa. My own teacher used to say, in answer to the question, how many times should I repeat my mantra? He said 24 hours of the day. And Holy Mother was also adamant about this practice of japa. So it is this practice of japa that finds its dominance as a spiritual practice. And in the same vein, the importance of taking the Lord's name was impressed on many of these disciples of Brahmananda, Vishuddhananda, and so on and so forth. And another Swami Siddheshwarananda, who was a disciple of Swami Brahmananda, emphasized this as well. He was the pioneering founder Swami of our Gretz, the Gretz Center just outside Paris, some 30-40 kilometers outside Paris. And so he writes like this: take your spiritual life seriously. In this Kali Yuga, that is in this present age, this age of confusion and technology and doubt and temptation and fear, he says, according to Sri Ramakrishna, repetition of the holy name is the highest spiritual practice. And he said, I am a fanatic of japa sadhana. So that's a remarkable testimony, if you like, of the importance of this practice. So in the same vein, the importance of taking the Lord's name was impressed on everybody. And of course, we want to realize the highest. We want to realize what that name represents. We want to realize God. There are two forms of mantra. One is Vedic mantras and one is Tantric mantras. Tantric mantras involve bija mantras. To some extent, Vedic mantras could have the same thing. For example, Gayatri mantra is a Vedic mantra named after the pattern of repetition which is called Gayatri, that rhythm, that certain style that comprises of three lines with 8 words in them, that kind of thing, 3 by 8, that kind of repetition. The rhythm of that is called Gayatri. And that Gayatri, the remarkable thing about it is not just words, it supplies us with a meditation. In fact, it asks, may we meditate? May we meditate on that glorious shining one. And so it tells us a little bit about all japa, even bija mantra. Bija mantra, bija means a seed. The idea is that every kind of concept that you have has its corresponding subtle version in your mind. And that in itself has behind it a series of subtle forces that comprise the universe. And these subtle forces have a vibratory quality, and the sound of that vibratory quality, when discovered by the inner research of the yogis, comes out as a certain sound. And when it comes out through the mouth, it comes out as a representation of that subtle thing which is heard as a vibration. It's called a bija mantra. For example, the principle of fire, not literally fire, but that protective element which gives us an element of security and safety and so on, and represents radiation in all its forms, and that which comes out as fiery things in the gross world, but in its subtle variety means something very different. It is a subtle version of it. And so that force naturally becomes very dynamic. And if you repeat that mantra, we can say, or primordial mantra is always Om, Om Rang. You repeat that. In any circumstances, you will be protected. It's as if a ring of fire has been put around you and is protected. There's a story like that, of an unsuspecting brahmana who's brought in to cook something. People mistook him for a servant in the kitchen. And naturally, being a yogi, he was repeating this mantra for protection, Om Rang Rang Ram, while he was cooking. And unfortunately, the poor eaters, it burnt all their stomachs and so on and so forth, something along those lines. So these bija mantras are extremely powerful. And mantra, one version of its meaning is a protective thought, arising from the same root as manasa, mind. So something that protects you. And when it's used in daily life, it acts as a protection, but also acts to put yourself in the presence of the Supreme, the presence of whatever the mantra represents conceptually to you. And so a mantra has no value if it has no feeling. So I love God, I love my closest version of it, my beloved Ishtadevata, therefore I repeat the mantra associated with that. And then it's like every time you say the word, it evokes a feeling of love that goes along with it. So that the mantra is always there to repeat somebody's name. Same thing in human relations. When two people fall in love, there's automatically, a repetition of the beloved, because you cannot have a concept without a word. As soon as you think of that person, then their name will come up. And we can deliberately cultivate that in order to feel the presence. We don't have to concentrate too much on it. Suppose saying I have a friend and the friend, I speak to the friend or I think of the friend. I don't have to dwell too much, because as soon as I say the name, then the image of the person comes up for me. And some people make a mistake. Well, if I'm to do japa some 10,000 times, I have to say quite quickly, 4 to 5 hours of doing it. I don't have really time to stop and think, what does it mean? Nobody asks you to do it. You're repeating somebody's name, the concept automatically arises. And then in meditation, being used in meditation has a different purpose, a different function, because there it's an invitation. Please come in, and now let me dwell on you. Let me settle the mind in a meditative way by repeating over and over again, not on your name, but what comes up are all your qualities. What comes up are the reasons why you are my beloved. What comes up is a steadiness in the repetition. And don't forget, whatever mantra you're repeating has its corresponding vibration in the subtle world, if you will, and evokes exactly that the mantra or that the bija mantra represents. So you're setting up a certain vibration in you that sets the tone as a kind of prerequisite, if you will, for deeper meditation, and often leads you there. So this japa sadhana is emphasized by all the great saints, and that the Holy Mother, Sharada Devi, would tell us that it purifies the psychophysical. Body and mind gets purified by its repetition. Not just the mind, but the body also, because how can you affect one without the other? Physical purity. In some cases, for example, my guru, as far as I'm aware, he never did any yoga exercise. My mantra diksha guru, my sadguru, but he lived to a ripe old age, and to all intents was healthy and holy, because you see, if you now saturate yourself with this japa sadhana, then you will always be in a blissful state, in a happy mood. Your mind will always be aligned to the object of the name that you're repeating. The two will be the same thing. You can't, when you say somebody's name, a person turns around. When you say the name of your most beloved form of the Supreme, then you will be attended to. So in any event, whenever you say it, it becomes an attunement. It becomes a tuning mechanism to the divine broadcast, what we call the cosmic consciousness, the beloved, the Supreme, the Word, the Logos, the Nous, the cosmic Christ, cosmic Ram Krishna, whatever you term you like, the cosmic Buddha, whatever term you have. And what is the benefit then of entering into that cosmic mind? Why should we not go to the highest? The Advaitins will say to us. Well, we can do that, but that would be very rare. It's for people of astute understanding and keen intellect. It's for people who have a dedicated practice. If people quote, oh, you see, I'm a non-dualist and I follow a certain person. Let us say Ramana Maharshi, who was an Advaitin. Yes. But now do you see, are you prepared to live as he lived? Are you prepared to go and live in a cave as he did? Are you prepared to sit there for hours and days? Are you prepared to do the sadhana spiritual practice that he did? So most people will say, no, thank you. I prefer to read about it, of course, and pontificate on it from a safe armchair. So we have to probably take things step by step. And this is what is behind the theological statements that incarnations have. Only through me. It doesn't mean me, the historical person. It means me, the Logos. When Christ says, I am the gate, or you can only see, only the Father is accessible. In his own words, he said tantamount to that. You can only see the Father through the Son, only through me. He's not talking about historical person. He's talking about John. He's talking about John's prologue. He's talking about, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. Same with when Krishna says, fix your mind on me alone. He's not talking about historical Krishna. He's talking about the cosmic mind that becomes flesh and dwells amongst us, and it is that cosmic mind which is operating in this form. It's only through the cosmic mind that you get it. And in the language of the Vedas, it is Brahma, the world of Brahma, Brahma Loga. That is that state of mind, that cosmic state of mind that we can go to, and we can either come back as a useful incarnation dedicated to the service of the world automatically, or carry on, glide on through into the highest Brahman that we could do. And of course, if you want to go directly, that requires dedicated practice. And practice of what? Constant viveka, constant discernment. Asato ma sadgamaya, lead us from the unreal to the real. It means lead us from the relative to the absolute. And when we've done that, we realize, oh, the relative is the absolute plus time and space, and function, and causality. When we employ that barrier, then we see, oh, this life is an expression. What we look at it in the world is only seemingly fragmented God. That's all. And understanding that, the world then becomes different. We're able to operate in it in a different way also. So these are some issues that come up simply derived from this act of purification and the importance of japa sadhana, this repetition of a mantra. So I've spoken a little bit, but nobody has asked a question yet. So maybe there's a question that comes up from any of that.
I do have the question that when M meets Sri Ramakrishna,
M is you, is it?
he asks him, "Are you married? Do you have children?" And he says yes. And he feels like his ego gets quite kicked when he meets him. So then there's another devotee who does art, and I actually don't remember the name now, but he wants to renounce to everything and to the arts. He's doing drama, and Sri Ramakrishna really enjoyed watching the drama that he was doing on theater, because he was representing like religious situations that he was of characters. And when he wanted to renounce, Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "No, don't do it, because you're going to teach a lot of people through your arts." So obviously, full renunciation is not for everyone. Although he states two situations. One is mild renunciation, and I think it was a strong determination for renunciation. And he states two different situations of a father who is working really hard to feed his family. So it confuses me a little that how can I ask this question? What is really the path? I mean, I guess there's a little bit of everything. There's a scale of grace in between this. But was the actual difference of full renunciation, is that really what is kind of, to call it right in some kind of way? Or is this mild renunciation? I mean, it's like, as Sri Ramakrishna says, you can help the world, like being in the world, in the here. That's why, I mean, if God, let's put it that way, didn't want you to be here, he would have taken your ego, like now, you terminate you now. But yeah, I read and this, like, very different situations within these and different ways of looking at it. So I know it's depending on the person as well, and the path they have and the purpose that source obviously has through them. But I just wanted to know, really, what's your view on it? Because obviously you would only have a strong determination to renounce everything when you really feel like I need to be here, I need to be connected. So yeah, I don't know if I asked a question right. But yeah.
So renunciation is essential for everybody. What do we mean by renunciation, you see? So when we talk of sannyasa, and what's useful is to study 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita on this, because the chapter is basically that it is a yoga of liberation, of freedom, through renunciation. The whole chapter is really based on this idea of renunciation, but two words are used. One word is sannyas, and the other one used is tyaga. When Ramakrishna was asked what is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, if you recite tyagi, 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 or Gita, 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 you come up with tyagi, tyagi, tyagi. That was his way of saying renunciation. So we have to take away the romantic idea that renunciation means going into cloistered life or hermit life, or going away by yourself, withdrawing from the world, and then getting some liberation in this way. This is not what this 18th chapter means, and it's not what Ramakrishna means either. Ramakrishna's conversation, we have to take the context of it. When he speaks to Mahendranath Gupta M, he's seeing a certain quality in him, but mainly he's seeing an ego. because most people will be proud enough to say, "Oh yes, I'm married," and he doesn't just say I'm married. He says, "But she's ignorant," and Ramakrishna takes him to task. You see, so everything he says, Ramakrishna crushes. In other words, what Ramakrishna is doing is crushing his ego. The first crush was, do you believe in God with form or without form? Oh, I think he's formless. Because it belongs to the Arya Samaj. Yes, fine, wonderful. But don't forget, God is with form also, and M is confused. How can it be both? How can it be both with form and without form? And how can we, it's either this or it's that, it can't be both. So systematically, in the first meeting, Ramakrishna is cutting away the man's ego. And he's a headmaster of a school also. He's an academic. He's a clever person. The trouble with you city people, that's the way Ramakrishna is talking. See, Ramakrishna is a rural person living in a city. The trouble with you people, you think you know everything. You think people are ignorant. You think people are knowledgeable. And M never thought about knowledge in these terms. He was thinking knowledge means academic learning. So systematically, Ramakrishna is molding people and changing their minds and seeing their quality and seeing their role in life. So when he sees the role of people in life, I think the most radical example of that is the householder who was really a great, great saint. Vivekananda mentions that this great, great householder saint is the most saintly person he's ever met and the highest renunciant. What does it mean? So the 18th chapter will tell us, you see, and in modern times, this term of sannyasa, it can raise in the mind of somebody the idea of an ordained monk or nun. But that's not what is meant. And the whole discussion is between a subject of sannyasa or karma yoga, really. And neither one, the Lord, neither Krishna nor Arjuna thinks of monastic life as an alternative to yoga of action. Not at all. It's not about that. And so, and the Lord even affirms in this chapter, he uses this phrase, perpetual sannyasin. One who is a perpetual sannyasin, who we normally interpret as monk or nun, who neither hates nor desires, somebody who neither hates nor desires. If you neither hate nor do you desire, you're a sannyasin, and who is free from the pairs of opposites. You have great forbearance. Praise and blame, you're immune to. Hot and cold, you're immune to. Plus and minus, you don't care. So when sannyasa means, what sannyasa means in this context is it means the path of knowledge. And the path of knowledge earlier has been called Samkhya or Jnana Yoga. And we find that much later, Arjuna wants to know what is the difference between these two terms. Sannyasa, which essentially means renunciation, Tyaga, which also means the same thing. So what's the difference between these terms? Why should we have these two terms? And so it becomes clear that monastic life is not directly meant by sannyasa. And he says, the wise declare sannyasa to be the giving up of desire-impelled actions. Not to give up actions, to give up desire-impelled actions. That is why renunciation is necessary for every path. And tyaga is the abandonment of the fruits of all actions. So giving up egocentric actions on the one side, this is called Jnana Yoga, and giving up the fruits of all your actions is karma yoga. Most people are karma yogis. And it has nothing to do with marriage or anything like that. It has everything to do with what are you doing and what ownership or level of ownership do you have over the fruits of actions. And every person will have an individual role in life. And some people are suited to different roles in life. We take up our individual role. What is spiritual life for the mother and housewife is being a mother and housewife. What is spiritual life for the bank clerk? It's being a good bank clerk. For a student, a good student. For a military man, a good military man. For a policeman, being a good policeman. For a school teacher, to be a good school teacher. And so it goes on. What level of attachment do you have to the actions? And are you prepared to give up the fruits of your actions? And how will you do that? So the total giving up of these two kinds of things, impelled as desire-impelled actions and the fruits of your actions, that is what is mentioned. And so there are these two kinds. And what can be achieved by this? You're overcoming, transcending, as it were, what I like to call the prophet-actor complex. You're renouncing prophet, and you're renouncing your role, your identity with the role that you're playing. Both of these have to be cultivated nicely. So what you're talking about is Ramakrishna identifying, oh, I can see a role in life for you, and I can see another role in life for you. Please play your role nicely. Please play your role nicely. Both of you require renunciation. Both of you have to give up the fruits of your actions. On this basis, that the energy we're using is not ours. And the results, the fruits of our activities are also not ours. They don't belong to us at all. So this can be done in two ways, of course. One is to replace the idea of the individual human sense of ownership, what we call human ego, by reverently installing the Lord of the universe in its place. That's one way. And then we must habitually see this wonderful divine supreme working through all hands, all feet, all bodies. All includes yours. All includes this. All eyes, all ears. And he's also the knower. He's also knowledge. He's also the goal of knowledge. He's 3 in 1. That's one way. He is that being who abides in the hearts of all. And he has his supreme and transcendental aspect also in addition to this. This we acknowledge. And so he's accordingly to be regarded as the undivided, the uninvolved, the witness. These are terms that are used. And he's only presiding. He's not doing anything. He's not acting in any way. He's presiding over the functions of his wonderful, indescribable power that we call the universe or nature. So that's the one way. The second way is to see the self in all beings and all beings in the self. And in the place of the self, we can put the personal God that can be similarly seen also everywhere. So this step will carry with it, of course, the element of worship, adoration, and a certain delight in this. That's the advantage of it. And and a still greater value is brought when the Lord teaches that all your activities must be offered as flower offerings to God. At the end of the day, we can have a different kind of meditation where we sit down, recall all the activities we had during the day, mentally put them in an offering basket, and offer them to our most beloved in the evening. Because in the evening, all the activities will still be with us. Instead of reviewing them or getting worried about them or fretting about them or having anxiety about them, we offer them to the true owner. Here are the fruits of your energy that I happen to use today. This was my expenditure. This is my account, and I give it to you. So when we offer these daily activities to this with devotion, with love, it adds a certain sweetness, an extra dimension to this. And for this purpose, then that Supreme Beloved, this Lord, must be viewed as the one from whom all things originate, the Creator, if you will, and who pervades everything. So the first is called Jnana Yoga. The second is called Karma Yoga. And when the third aspect is brought in, I like to call this Karma Bhakti. Karma Bhakti, suitable for everybody, and how sweet it is. This is the difference between sannyas and tyaga. So, work as worship. That is suitable for everybody, and that is called tyaga. The Gita encourages this kind of renunciation. So everybody should renounce. Desire-impelled actions, and also the fruits of such actions. See, everybody has some inborn tendencies that come out, and they have to be different. Otherwise, how do we all fit in together? Everyone will have to have a different divine function. And a person with inner insight understands, that's your role. Please play your role well. If life is a game, please play the game and play it well, to the best of your ability. This overcomes the egoistic tendency of prophet-actor complex, as I call it. You had a question?
I suppose that it's relating to life and work and that balance. And I kind of found over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I was very focused on work and the demands of work. And certainly every morning, continue to do my japa, and offer it up. But I found that when there wasn't a balance, or when work took over and the momentum of that, I felt almost as if I was slipping back into probably where I was 10 years ago, which was I was focusing on the activity and the potential results, and rather than offering it up, trusting, just taking the action and trusting the process. I suppose I felt a bit overwhelmed is the word. And it's only that back today, where I was out of that environment, that I kind of went, wow, was that really me? And how easy it is to slip back into that sense of activity. And I suppose it feeds ego and it feeds everything else. So my question is, how or what advice or what tip would you give to catch that sooner? It almost happened and 2-3 weeks went by, and then I came back today and realized where I was at. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I hope I am.
So regularity, you see, is the key to forming any habit. And if there's any lapse, even for a day, the second day becomes more difficult until the exception becomes the rule. And that's something that could happen. But then supposing there's a regularity, but the level of emotion is not in that. You see, if I simply repeat a word, and I think I've done the mantra beginning with ko. Is that right? I think most of you know what I mean by this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very unique mantra.
Yeah. But then you see, it's not a sound. You see, if you repeat something, then you'll induce a morbid condition, and sleep will come in, because the attention has got nothing of interest to grab onto. When you have feeling within it, then that makes a difference. So that means that all your spiritual daily practice has to increase in intensity, because naturally, as you practice, it becomes more meaningful. And we often have to take more time. We often have to slow down. Definitely have to schedule time. And whatever time we allocate, we have to make it quality time. Is it better to repeat 3 rounds of japa consisting 108 times each in a hurried way, in a way that fulfills our obligation, or to say it 3 times, mantra 3 times, with heartfelt meaning, heartfelt intensity, slowing it down in a meditative way? And I would say it's more valuable to do it that way. So what amount of feeling are we inserting into our practice? And are we doing it in a regular way? So that it's not just quantity, it's quality. And then we carry that with us. It's like charging your battery in the morning and taking it with you. And then your day goes better, completely better. Some people I tell, take your mala and wear it around your neck. So at least there's something physical to remind you of the presence, the divine presence with you. And also to do your japa continuously. And it often comes up, but I'm not saying, you have to understand, there are 3 ways of repeating a mantra. One is to repeat it audibly. One is to repeat it with lips moving, and the other is to repeat it mentally. Mentally is the highest form of repetition. And so simply repeating it constantly all the time, so that it becomes, you make friends with a mantra. I'll always remember one devotee taking a pilgrimage and asking me, what should I do on this pilgrimage? It was an arduous pilgrimage. In fact, it was doing a perambulation around Mount Kailash. And he said, I've never been so cold in my whole life, and altitude sickness was a problem for me. But anyway, what should I do? I said, make friends with your mantra. And he understood what I meant. What I meant was, he's repeating it, but it's mechanical. And he lost touch of the meaning of it. What does it embody? Normally a mantra would embody your Ishtadevata, an audio form of your Ishtadevata. And once you repeat it, it becomes an unconscious repetition. You're no longer consciously repeating it. It's continuously going on in the background. It's a bit like if you listen to a song or a piece of music, and you listen to it and you listen to it again, and 4 times you repeat it, and then you go off to work. The dang thing is in your head the whole day, and it becomes a nuisance. I wish I could think of something different. So it's the same thing, except it's not a nuisance that you're repeating, because it comes with an emotional response as well. You're repeating a holy name. You're repeating the most endearing name and endearing presence that is possible. So I don't know if I answered your question properly.
You have, and you've just begged another question very quickly. Whilst I carry imagery and pictures with me, did you call it a bead, or what is it you were saying reminded people that they wore around their neck?
Yes, a rosary, a mala, yes. The mala that they use for repetition, whether they use it or not, it symbolizes the whole 108 mantras that are normally there in a mala, in a rosary, beads counting for japa. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that could be a really good idea.
Picture around with you. If you're sitting at a desk, put the picture. You and the Lord together. Yeah. Okay, come on, Lord. Let's open the door together. Now let's work together. Please sit here while we work together.
Yeah.
While I use your divine energy to do this work. And put a small flower there or something like that. A loving glance from time to time. After every unit activity, a loving glance. Thanks, Lord. This is called Raga, pronunciation of that term. So I think it's 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Good. So I think we close it off, and unless there are any final questions, we leave it there. I hope this was useful to you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Guru Mahagat.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Om